This episode of Super Pulp Science is brought to you by Strange Brew. Go to Steam, grab the demo, and wishlist it. It's a video game. It's on Steam. We tried really hard, guys. Strange Brew.
Attention, citizens. It's time for Super Pulp Science.
This is Super Pulp Science, where we talk about how genre gets made. This is a very packed studio today, dear listeners. We have a full house. We have brought to us Gamer's Most Foul. I would like to actually also mention there will be a lot of duck-related puns. If you are offended by dad-level punning, you should probably turn off this episode. This is the only warning you'll get and the last one you're going to get. In Justin Curry's misspent youth, he's known the world over as chasing artwork, but in his misspent youth, he worked at a video game company. And so I'm going to rely on him to help filter some questions to our other two guests, Devin and Skillen, who both work for Electric Monk Media and who are launching their very their very second video game. Strange Brew. First one that you've developed. And one of the things that we do on this show is we like to talk about how genre gets made. How does an idea go from being just an idea to something that you can actually engage with in the public sphere? And video games are a whole other animal than books, comics, graphic novels, film, theater, stuff that we have a fair amount of experience with. But before we talk to you two gents, I want to remind the dear listener that Justin Curry once had the coolest job in the world and left it behind. Why don't you tell us that story?
I did, yeah. I started out as a graphic designer, and I always wanted to be a concept artist. Graduated from graphic design. I started working at a design firm and doing illustration on the side. And then when I started going to Comic-Cons, I ran into people who actually worked at a video game company. And by the next year, I had developed enough of a digital style and enough illustration that I felt confident enough about applying, and ended up getting a job at Complex Games here in the city that's still around. They're actually really close by. And I worked
close to our hearts.
And close to our hearts. And the story I like to tell, like younger people who are in like the graphic design course who want to get into illustration, is that when I was applying for that concept art job, I was up against like other concept artists that were quite a bit more skilled than I was illustration wise, but they had like little digital skills. Like they didn't know their way around Photoshop and Illustrator enough. And so I got that job over, again, more talented illustrators. So that interface design skill really, really helped out.
So having a more generalized skill set in the digital space, as well as some illustration ability.
Yeah, and I often say like having that graphic design is like a secret weapon in the illustration world. If you're an illustrator and you take graphic design, you become much stronger just overall. And yeah, so I worked for years as it was kind of a little all over the place. I still did like logos for games and a lot of interface design and storyboarding and a concept art as well. But it's really interesting in the video game world, especially in like a bigger studio, that pipeline of like the inception of an idea to like the rough thumbnail sketches, and that gets taken to like 3D, and then it gets rigged to be animated. And by the end, like so many people have had their hands on a single idea. It takes a small village to make a video game.
And one of the games, I don't know if it got top billing, but one of the games that you worked on was DuckTales.
I worked on a DuckTales game. Right? Yeah, Quack Attack.
This game is somebody else's IP, yes, that then is licensed and then developed. So there's already a baseline of what the character design will be and what the concept will be sort of presented to you, right? So the company didn't have to start from the ground up, design everything. They had a lookbook, a design Bible, and all these other things that represented what DuckTales was.
Yeah.
Right? And so you couldn't go afoul.
It's true.
Come on.
Yeah, that was ultimately why I ended up leaving the company. It was great group of guys, great company to work with. But when you're working on bigger IPs, or even like I was working under art directors and stuff, you have to try to match their style. And what I was doing at the time was more and more unique to to myself, and so I was kind of putting all my efforts into work that wasn't helping me at my full-time job, but helping me on the side, and that's why I kind of left and started doing my own thing. But it's a whole different beast working on a big long-term project with a bunch of other people, and I do miss it sometimes.
Now, speaking of long-term projects, perhaps not with a whole bunch of other people, but with a whole bunch of other problems, because you have to design it from the ground up. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves and tell a little bit about how you ended up in video games, and then we'll get to talking about Strange Brew.
Alrighty. I'm Skillen. I'm the lead developer and designer on the game.
I'm Devin. I'm the lead 3D artist / technical artist.
Do you have to talk often like this about your work?
Nope.
No. Usually we're just doing the work. So when you're doing something, you don't have to talk about it as much.
Are you reticent about the idea that now that the game is sort of in a form that has to be presented, that part of the sort of repulsive necessity of the job now in the world that we live in is now you guys have to have a face and have a voice in speaking for the game?
Need a voice, but I mean,
yeah.
You can't see my face, right?
You
can see my face,
yeah.
but other people can't, so I'm fine with that. No, I think that's fine. Sometimes like explaining like the process behind something or like what you're trying to capture can like help sell the product, and that's really what it comes down to. Like if you want to continue doing creative stuff, you need to be at least moderately successful in order to continue doing it. Therefore, you have to do the work to support the product that you've created in order to keep being creative.
And so here you are.
Exactly.
Yeah. Flapping your wings for us.
Precisely.
Should I keep a tally? I don't know. I think I'm up to 3 at least, maybe 4. How about you? How do you feel about the unnecessary or the once unnecessary spotlight now being part of doing game development and game design?
Was it ever unnecessary though?
Yeah, it's a good question.
I debate that. I reject that premise.
Well, keep going.
John
Tell us more.
Carmack,
Yeah.
John Romero.
Yeah.
That's my counterexample that I think like
For the dear listener who doesn't know who they are or what they do, give us the context of that.
they're the two guys who, well, John Carmack pretty much created is famous for writing the code in Doom, and John Romero was kind of the director, and what they ended up doing was creating this little franchise called Doom.
Yeah.
I mean,
almost nobody played it.
Yeah, no one's ever heard of it. And interestingly, they ended up putting out Doom as a shareware game initially. So you wouldn't pay for it. You get like a floppy, or it'd get shared around. And then if you liked it, you could send them a check, like mail in a check to these guys at id Software. They'd made a bunch of other games before, things like Commander Keen, Wolfenstein, so on and so forth. But Doom is the thing that kind of defined the FPS or first-person shooter genre, and kind of like, which eventually led to video games arguably becoming mainstream. I would argue Halo kind of like made video games so that instead of just people like me playing video games, it became like, you know, the frat bros where like you know what I mean? Just like everybody, it just became like mainstream culture after
It could be easy fun. It turned video games into something that was more like a regular appliance, like something you had in the house that everyone knew how to use.
Yeah.
I would agree with you there. Yeah, for sure.
Just mainstream culture. Like at some point previously, you have to imagine something like movies was a niche thing, and then it eventually became a mainstream thing, right? So, and I would argue that like Halo is the thing that did that, and Doom is the thing that directly led to Halo being developed. Without Doom, you don't have Halo.
But then we don't know the names of those people. But in the indie space, it's really important, I think, to let people know that, like, how big is the team here working on this game?
5-6 people.
5-6 people. And who's doing the majority heavy lifting, total hours in? It's really you two, right? For most of that time.
What are the controls?
Do the tutorial. Don't play the tutorial.
I'm getting conflicting instructions.
Yeah. Welcome to this studio. People think about video games as being this big, you know, AAA, hundreds of people in a studio working and iterating things. But really, when it's on the shoulders of the authors is a way to think. But that's how I'm thinking of it.
Well, for a good chunk of time, it was just Skillen working on it.
Right.
Yeah.
He was he was building it up from like turning it into an actual game. Figuring out what the game should be.
Yeah,
Can we talk about the conception of the
there's a
idea?
leap there that you made as if it was normal and like understood by all, but working on a long time before it became, quote, an actual game. I think that's a really interesting part of the creative process that most people who think how video games work and how they actually work are very different. So why don't you talk about that leap?
I'm curious, what do you think the normal conception is? Then?
Okay, so to me,
Yeah.
if it was me and I was in charge, if someone said, here's $100 million, you're going to run a game studio now, don't do that. Whoever's listening, right? It would be bad. But I would imagine that the first thing that you need to do is have a really clear concept backed by really strong visual elements with a story that has an interesting beginning, middle, and end with some strong if this, then that.
There's so many wrong things you're saying.
Something to
if
bring
you're
a person in first.
If you're working on games, ignore all of that.
Yes.
That has nothing to do with
is
anything.
why-
That is like, okay, I understand now. Sorry. I've been in it for so long at this point that my conception of this is become much more like very different. And like we talk about this like fairly regularly. Okay, at its core, game design is a iterative process. And what you want to do is you want to start off with like something that is compelling, right? Start off with like a core compelling experience, idea, whatever, something that sparks
Can you give me a for
enthusiasm.
instance?
Get zombies chasing you, right?
Gotcha.
A zombie game that plays like a zombie movie. That's kind of like what the initial like, what do you want to call it? The prompt, right? The prompt was make something that feels like a zombie movie rather than a zombie game. And for people who don't know, zombie movies, generally speaking, the plot structure generally is there's an outbreak, you get chased from scene to scene, there's a bunch of stuff. It's more
You can't stop the zombies.
yeah. It's more about fleeing and evading, and it's more about like the terror of being chased by like an unstoppable kind of force. Whereas like zombie games tend to be there's endless waves of fodder enemies that you mow down without second thought.
Right.
So it's like these are very different things.
Yeah.
Okay, so the couple of games that I've seen, like that there was an inception of, it was usually like a programmer or somebody had an idea for the game. And are you an artist as well, or just more?
I can make art good enough to
Yeah.
make
Okay. So here's
competent people. You know what I mean?
the kernel of each game that I saw that became a real game was first populated by like it was basically basic mechanics, and then we call it programmer art. It is not. It is basically like blocks chasing blocks around.
Correct.
And then once you figure out something fun there, then you present it to people, and it goes from there. But what did that very first version of this game look like visually?
Okay, so the very, very first instance of this game was actually a game jam game made by a former like crew member or like a former employee, and it was pre-bought like Unity asset art or Unity asset store art, and it pretty much stemmed from a improper implementation of a ragdoll program or like a plugin. That made it so that if you walked and anything like marginally brushed against you or you like touched anything, that you would basically like crumple to the floor. So the controls.
So the ragdoll here, for the dear listeners not super conversant in this, is just the framework of the character.
So the ragdoll is when the character, instead of being controlled through like animations or whatever, basically only is affected by physics, and they slump over, and you just
Think mannequin being thrown off a cliff.
yeah, exactly.
And then the asset store, the Unity asset store, big catalog of pre-built things that you can buy. So like buildings and characters and stuff. And so you have like a place to kind of to build off of. You don't have to build everything from scratch.
So are the game jams kind of like how we do story breaks then?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Probably.
but with
You have,
video
like,
game assets
what is it,
and
couple
off-the-shelf
days?
stuff.
Usually it's like, a couple days, and you're just trying to come up with an idea that you might want to expand on, and you're just trying to nail a mechanic
Right.
to see if it's compelling or not. And then basically you either are like, oh, there's something here, or you throw it away.
So I find interesting about this is when I talk to comedians about how they write jokes, and they're like, when they get in a room and they try to write the jokes, what a lot of them talk about those like writing sessions are more about the timing than the joke itself, right? Like, so is the game jam about like, okay, it's a compelling idea, and if this moved first, then it makes it interesting, but if this moves second, then it's no longer, from a joke perspective, no longer funny. Like, where do you put the punchline? Is that what's happening in the game jam? It's like, here's my idea. What if it's post-apocalypse? Let's put those buildings in there. Nah, that doesn't work. What if it's on an island? Nah,
Okay,
that
so
doesn't work.
what you're describing is more like genre versus like story, right? You can tell different stories within genre conventions, right? So you can have like a zombie story about finding love, right? Or you could have like, a steampunk story, but changing the settings doesn't necessarily change, like, is the core story concept compelling or not?
Yeah.
And that's what we're looking at.
Right. So then let's name that original mysterious former employee, because that's where the idea came from.
Kevin Whitmore.
Yeah, Kevin Whitmore. So Kevin Whitmore had an idea that Electric Monk liked, or that you guys liked, or how did it go from one to the other?
Well, he made the Game Jam game, and this is my understanding of it. So, and several people several streamers and stuff played through it, and it made for some like good like clips and content fodder type stuff, and so it was gaining a little bit of traction. And then
that's where the coffee came in, right? There was still like a coffee component. You drank coffee to stay alert.
Yeah, the coffee component there was you drink the coffee, and that prevents you from like ragdolling. So it's like your tolerance towards colliding with anything goes down as your caffeine goes down.
My recollection of that was like you're at work, you're trying to get through a day of work by constly having to go back to the coffee machine or something like that.
No,
right?
you're just trying to get to work.
Yeah.
Just
walk down. Yeah, you're just walking down a street essentially. Okay. And basically, like our bosses, like from what I understand, they're just like, okay, well, we kind of like the direction, or like we like the concept of this, so they basically paid for the IP.
And so then the IP there, and this is good because we talk about a lot of like what is a core idea and what are you selling as IP. To me, it breaks down that coffee as fuel is the idea that they bought.
Yeah.
And then coffee as fuel is now a mechanic inside Strange Brew, where there is a zombie apocalypse where the more coffee you drink, the faster you can run, and that keeps you from being destroyed by the pumpkin spice apocalypse, right? And so
that's close enough.
Yeah.
Where did the duck come in?
Yeah.
There's a duck. You play as a duck mascot in this game.
That came as a result of just naming the company Moon Ducks.
Oh.
And then the costume came later.
Because Moon Ducks sounds similar to another coffee company you've heard of, but we won't name.
So you're playing, the mascot for a coffee company, and that's the coffee brand that's everywhere in the game.
So we're...
and you get to be a duck, which then is awesome. Yeah. That's why I brought
and that's your health meter as well, right? I played like
2 minutes.
10 minutes, briefly, but like you get hit once and you lose your mascot's head, and then the next hit.
So we briefly alluded, I briefly mentioned that like game design is inherently a iterative process. I would argue most creative things are, but I know for sure game design is. And one of the things that happened was we had the character without the duck costume, and then at a certain point, it's like, our boss Mike was basically like, well, if we put the main character in the duck costume, then he looks way more distinctive, and it's just really funny. And so we did that.
Like when you're in a horde of zombies, it's
just way funnier. Yeah. So basically, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, well, we saw what it was like just with like a normal guy, and then from there, it's like, oh, but what if we make him a duck? And then we did. And, a couple, like 2 weeks later.
I think originally we were going to have the costume as just like an unlockable thing if you find a secret.
Yeah, that's right.
And then it just became the main thing.
Oh, no. Yeah, see, I'm out of coffee. I can't go anymore.
What I like about it, because I played early versions of this where there was no duck. And then as soon as there was a duck costume, I was all in on like, it's got to stay the duck. And then I don't know at what point I played, but there was a function in the game where you got to keep the duck head until you got first touched by a zombie and it would fall off. And my sons were playing with me and it became a shame game. Like who can keep the duck head on the longest became our own game we were playing while we were playing your game.
You see the fear on the guy's face when the duck head is gone too. He doesn't look too worried until
Permanently frightened.
Yeah, that's right.
So
It's funny. So then those things are all happening, but it's not like, that's not a story. Right. And games aren't stories, but they can be stories.
They are.
They
But
can have
if you
stories
suck at
within.
playing, the story stops.
The story stops,
Well,
right?
okay, so I would argue that games can have a story within them, but the game itself is not the story. Like there are two distinct elements, right? There's like what's going on in the world, and then there's like what you're doing, right? So it's like in our lives, right? We have stories about our life, but our life isn't like a cohesive narrative necessarily, right? That's a game, right? It's the same thing because it's like this morning weren't like, oh, okay, well, like this is the narrative that I'm going to do or whatever, right? We might have plans, but then, life deviates from that. And that's what creates like interesting moments. And like, that's arguably what the game is. So you can like have stories about a game.
Dear listener, was be a decent husband. Well, I got all the busy things I had to do today done before I ran here to the studio. I didn't have a great high score today.
That happens.
So like when you talk about like, I like what you're saying there about like the world that you're in versus the game you're trying to play, right?
Yeah. So I don't know. In a lot of ways, it's like, okay, there's what's happening in the world, right? There's the story arc, or we'll say the character of the world itself, right? And that's like, the overarching thing, and that you're going to play within that. And then you have like what you're trying to accomplish, right? And then you have like what you actually do. And to a certain extent, like all of those things interplaying with each other, like working together, is what creates stories, right? Like you can be like, oh, I tried to do this thing and then I didn't do the thing and then I got devoured by zombies. And it's like, okay, that is a micro story, right? But the overall game itself, right? Like you can't assume that there's going to be a single cohesive story about playing through a video game. Like, you know what I mean? It's like the person playing the video game is going to edit like the best hits of like their experiences. So what you're trying to do when you're making a game is create like story beats, like situations for them to have those best hits so that they can retroactively edit together their story of what the game is.
Which to me is like what happens when we do tabletop gaming. That's what your goal as a narrator or a DM or a GM is you're trying to create situations that allow the player to connect a series of dots that are the story of their character through there.
Yeah.
All right. Now, speaking of jobs you have to do, Devin, what do you do? What's your job here? Because I noticed when it glitched, everyone looked to you with a little bit of only Devin can save us.
Well, it's my computer, so it's hard. Yeah, so I mean, we both work on development, but mine tends to be more related to art. I made the characters.
We say made,
sculpted, textured. I do like a lot of just integration stuff in Unity, like with the art. I do all the rigging. I work with the sound designer to get all the sounds in the game. Yeah.
So technical question related to rigging. Character moves in a very specific kind of floppy-footed way.
Yeah.
Is that something you program by adjusting the rig like in the process of animation?
You set up a skeleton and then you basically paint how much that skeleton influences each part of the body. And so the way that...
Wait, that's how you do that? That's crazy.
I mean, you can do it through a few different ways. Like you start off with a map of... you bake out the map of how much the joints influence each vertex, and then inevitably you have to go in and adjust some of that because the baker gets some things wrong.
So walking and run cycle of a man in a big green mascot duck costume, was there a lot of laughing during those first couple tests?
Yeah, I do. I like to mess around with it and see all the extreme poses and see how they affect the outfit. I specifically painted the weights on the costume so that the butt wiggles when he moves. So yeah,
So like, how many days of trial and error for like that butt's wiggling a little too much? No, we gotta scale that back a little bit.
well, there were a few iterations. Usually it takes about a day for each rig. I mean, it used to take me a lot longer, but the most recent one took about a day.
And does that are you responding? Are you watching how other people play it, or is this just like
I mean,
like the artist in their studio more or less? We talk about how it's
yeah, this is kind of cut off from that.
Yeah,
like,
cut off from the world.
I'll set it up and then I'll test it with as many different extremes as I can think of, and then if it works with all of them, then it keeps going.
You just got to let your internal aesthetic compass guide how much to let the butt wiggle, you know?
Yeah. Well,
It's
this is
very
what
important.
This is what I like about it, is this idea that each of you had these kind of worlds that you're in charge of, but then you have to smash them together.
Oh, yeah.
See if it works, and then that gets smashed into the play.
That is called a merge. That is what we refer to as a merge, and it is a time of great chaos. No, not always, but sometimes it is like
suffering.
Yeah. And but anyways, so the software that we use, because we all work remotely, is we use this. Well, it's called Git. It's a repository. So that's how you Google Docs, for instance, right? You might have like multiple people writing in a document, and that will just update continuously the entire time.
Right.
But if you have like a Google Doc where it's like, okay, you download the file and then you upload the file, someone else downloads the file,
Right.
and then both of you have changes to this file, and then you upload it.
Merge.
That's a merge conflict. So what Git basically does is it looks at, oh, well, you changed this aspects of it and you changed this aspects of it. Unless both of you change the same thing, I'll just take whatever the newest change is. But sometimes you both change the same thing, and we have to be quite mindful over who is doing what, because otherwise we get tons of merge conflicts, and worst case scenario, somebody's losing a ton of work, right? Because it's just, if you both change something, then you have to pick one or the other.
You're describing a situation of pure terror for me. Like, imagine.
Yeah, that's what a merge conflict can be. In fact, it can represent, like worst case scenario, say like a bad merge conflict can result in like up to about a week worth of suffering sometimes, depending on how it is. Yeah, no, but we have advanced our usage of Git, our mastery over Git to.
Yeah, like we have all of our artists use it.
Yeah.
Like our
Yeah.
sound designer and
It's way better now. COVID actually forced us to adapt, to get everybody on board and be good at using Git properly.
Yeah. In my experience with stuff like that, it's like a substantive editor comes in and they may be a week or two behind the changes that you received from a different substantive edit. And then you get those and you're looking at them and there's too many if this, then that's. And so they all create conflict inside the narrative. Like if I made that change, but not this one, but not that one. It's that kind of problem that the Git is solving for
What do
you.
you think?
Ultimately, yes.
Opening it, like having that final book file and going back in and making changes, but it was the final you were looking for, and you spent hours in final, and you
Yeah, not final,
Not
but
final.
final
for sure
today for sure final.psd.
So in Git, how it works is you actually have like multiple like lineages, I guess, or like multiple like strings of like, well, these are the series of changes you made, and then you pulled in these, right? And they're called branches inside of Git. So anyways, we all have like our own running like history, and we can see each other's history, and you like pull in, or like you can rebase, which basically applies your changes sequentially to that other one in the order, right? Like chronologically, so that then it collapses it down into one branch.
My estimation of both of you has grown enormously in this last few seconds. Like, you're such well-adjusted humans for having to deal with this as your regular workflow.
Oh yeah,
This is insane. Why do you do this? Don't do this. Don't do this job, dear listener. This is insane.
This is the same with all cooperation, though. Like, you either are going to have to do everything by yourself, or you have to figure out how to cooperate effectively, like in some manner. And like, at least Git is like, the ultimate arbiter. Yeah, it's the arbiter of how it works.
Duck slap. Duck slap. Oh, that's fun. Oh, good. Duck slap. Oh, I lost my head.
Whereas in our industry, it's a little more, the pipeline is more separated. Like I do my part and then I hand it to you and I'm hands off until you hand it back.
Till I give it back.
Right? But you guys have to be working on the same document at the same time from different places.
Because there's so many different
pieces of the same ultimate project, but ideally not on the same pieces of that, if that makes sense.
That's
we wouldn't
that
ideally,
conflict,
because then merge conflicts.
Yeah.
See, so we coordinate, and then it'll be like, oh, okay, one of us needs to work on something, and then it's like, okay, it's kind of like changing gears almost. You need to like driving standard. You need to like synchronize before you can shift gears. So if I want to work on something that Devin was working on, we need to like merge everything together and then like deal with any issues. And then like we have to talk to each other to figure out whose changes to take.
Gentlemen, does this mean I should be more patient with AAA studios with hundreds of employees because they're all dealing with merge conflicts nonstop? And that's why games take so long to make.
They got other problems.
Yeah, I don't think that's their main issue.
But like in the trenches, like the people who are actually doing the work, I'm just trying to imagine if we tripled or quadrupled the number of U's that had to do this on any given level, that would just create, to use your word, merge conflicts like that would just be exponentially large, wouldn't it?
Okay, so when you have like a whole bunch of people, generally what would happen is you have a team, and that team would be like on a branch, and then people in that team would have their little things portioned off. So you do what we're doing, but just instead of me doing like almost all of the programming stuff, or like essentially all of the programming stuff, it would be like broken up between different people, and then that would usually go to like one team lead. They would pull all the changes that are relevant in, make sure that everything's working, then push that to a main branch.
Okay, so in all of this, when does it start to look good?
That is highly subjective, but
because I just saw it and it's fun. I've seen it for a while. I don't remember the first time you guys brought in a playtest for me to try. It was a while back though.
Yeah.
And now it actually feels like what you described wanting it to be. It feels like that now. And I'm used to iterative processes in art. So like I could see the vision even if I couldn't see the vision in front of me because he moved like he was supposed to, even if he didn't look exactly like he was supposed to. How do you stay optimistic that it's going to turn out? Like, I find that amazing. Justin can do a good picture that looks amazing from the jump. And so now we can build a story around that image. But if I had to only rely on the scratchiest, bare bones napkin drawings of his the entire time, you might lose hope after a year or two. How have you sustained your hope that it would look good? Or have you?
No, I don't think I was optimistic.
Oh, tell us more. This is
which just made me work harder to make it look good.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same.
If I was optimistic, I feel like
slack off.
Which I think is an important part of the process. If you're confident from day one and that never falters, then something's real wrong.
So
that's definitely true. I agree with that.
Here's the thing. Okay, so I got this job from actually going to one of your things and then talking with my now boss Mike, right? And at the time, I was driving delivery, right? And so when I first started this job, I was like, oh, wow, I'm way underqualified. It was actually technically like slightly different responsibilities and stuff, but I was like, wow, I'm super underqualified, but like, I don't know, maybe I can figure it out.
That's our entire life.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, and I was like, okay, so like the only thing that changes is being like, oh wow, I have no idea how to do this, but I sure hope I can get it working. I sure hope I can figure it out. Is eventually you just start to trust that you actually can, and then you start to be able to put like slightly better estimates on how long it's going to take. But that's really it. Otherwise, it's, especially in programming at least, by the time that you do something, it's done now, right? Or like if you actually solve the problem, you don't have to solve the same problem again. That's the entire point of automating things, right? So you're always, I mean, if you're actually like, hauling ass, like working hard, you'll be solving new problems all the time, right? So that means by necessity, you don't know how to solve the problem that you haven't solved. Right. So there is never a point that it's like, oh, yeah, like I'm super confident that I'm going to like get everything to work. You just have to like realistically, it's because I know I've solved a small problem that is on a step. Journey up the mountain takes 1,000 steps.
Right.
And you're like, well, I managed to do one step, and I'll just like keep my head down and have faith that if I do all of the steps, eventually I'll get to the top of the mountain. That's it. That's the only faith you have.
The frustrating / amazing thing about like the industry we're in is like all these problems that you've solved and all these things that you guys have figured out. That's just for this game. On the next game, it's going to be all kinds of new problems.
You can see
It's
a different mountain.
Yeah. Talk about that with books, right?
Yeah.
Like, I figured out finally how to make this book.
Yeah.
But that's not the exact same path I'm going to take with this next book.
Yeah, you got to start literally from scratch.
The journey is always different.
Yeah.
The interesting thing, though, is you get better at, like, once you've climbed a few mountains, you might not know how to climb this specific mountain, but you generally get better at climbing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's very much like that.
As they say. Yeah.
Like, I was kind of talking about this with Mike on the way here, where it's like, like, you hit a certain point in life, I think. And I'm kind of curious, actually, to hear what you guys have to say about this, where it's like, yeah, like, I'm 35, and it's like, okay, I feel like I'm
a baby.
I mean, starting to hit that midlife phase, starting to hit my stride. Like, no longer
by that comment. You're at midlife. That's okay.
Like no longer, completely green or anything, right? And it's like, it feels like when people are inexperienced, like completely inexperienced, they like have a lot of stuff where the impulse is always like, oh, but what if I did this and this and this and this?
Mm-hmm.
And as you start to get older, you're like, but what can I trim away and how can I nail like one thing? And it's just like, you just cut away and you're just like, okay, but if I do one thing well, that will just work better as compared to just throwing 500 ideas that are poorly implemented. And so I don't know. I just feel like,
well, we deal with this, to speak to your question a little bit. We deal with this when someone comes to us and says, I have an idea for a book / project / movie / whatever. And the first thing that Justin and I see as a red flag, he's looking at me because he knows, if they come and they've already planned the spin-off series and the sequel before the script exists, red flag, right? They have not yet implemented the first step of what is the core idea, like what you did here, where the core idea, right, is how do you make the game feel like a zombie movie rather than a zombie game? If they don't have that core conceit, that all other things are
there's no foundation,
then it is a red flag. And so you do have to trim away to know what the next step is.
Absolutely. That is the iterative process. What you just described is dead on. It's like you have to do enough work, build enough up that you can recognize the dead wood that you have to trim away so that the new growth, the new advancement can happen. And that is the iterative process.
We have the benefit, like you had on Spark Chasers, right, of giving it to a substantive editor or a first reader to say what doesn't work. And so we can test it a little easier than you can. Like ours can be in a rougher shape to have someone go through the entire thing and give substantive feedback.
I think the rough version of a book is a little more accessible than a rough version of a video game.
Yeah. So like to what you're asking about before, when does it go from like feeling like, this is why I say it's a matter of opinion. It's like, okay, when does it go from feeling? Yeah. When does it go from feeling like a game or looking like, from not feeling or looking like a game to feeling or looking like a game? And ideally, you go to feeling like a game very quickly, and then the looking like a game can kind of catch up afterwards. But like you need to hit like what Justin was talking about, you have programmer art. And if the game isn't fun in programmer art stage, it's not going to fly. Yeah. Putting lipstick on an awful game, like you're putting lipstick on a pig. It's still a pig. I don't know what to tell you. Like you can make it as beautiful as possible. And we've all seen these games that are absolutely gorgeous, but there is nothing to them. And you play them for 5 minutes and delete them and forget they exist.
Go. No, I'm stuck. Oh, I'm dead.
No, you're ducked.
The most fun I've had playing with a group of guys was we were play testing you were moving on a bus and you were kind of doing like a fight on a bus, and it was all just blocks. It was a big rectangle and you were smaller rectangles on there and you had skinny rectangles and you were fighting each other, and it was just like, this is the concept for the mechanics.
Feels like a game.
Okay, we knew after like 4 hours of nonstop we couldn't put it down. There's something here to continue.
We had a similar thing on Sunday. George McHale, who has just directed his first feature film, Night Terror, brought a rough cut of the first 45 minutes of the movie, and it has all these blood gags, but also actual jokes. There's comedians in the film, and he wanted us to watch it simply to see if we'd laugh without knowing a laugh was coming. That was his only real, like, underlining like motivation. It doesn't have to look like a movie. It doesn't have to sound like a movie. It doesn't have to have the gradient, the
But
sound
if it's
design.
landing when it's this unpolished.
Yeah. But if you laugh at the funny parts, then the rest is worth doing. Right.
So I don't know if you've seen this. There's, I think I saw it as a YouTube video or something where it's like just abstract shapes. It's like a big triangle, a small triangle, and like a square or something.
Yeah.
And they're just moving around. And then it's like, what? And I think it was like a psychologist thing. And they asked like, oh, well, what do you think is going on or whatever? And they came up with like this entire story. But what's interesting is that people came up with like the overall themes were somewhat consistent. And this is just moving abstract shapes around. Right. So
humans respond to shape language really universally. Yeah.
The story thing, though, is it's your interpretation to a large extent of a sequence of events. Like, you know, so what I'm getting at is you can just have like those rectangles moving around. And as long as, in a lot of ways, like the art and all the other stuff for the game is kind of just like it's genre or it's like theming, right? So it's like, you know, you have something like, say, like a board game like Settlers of Catan. You ultimately have a game about like you're collecting resources and then you're like putting down cards, right? It could be you're building buildings, or it could be you're building a railway station or whatever. So you can like pick the theme, but like if the core gameplay itself is compelling, then whatever theme you pick, as long as you like lean into it and kind of make some like adjustments, it's going to work.
I have two comments. Number one, as your friend, but also co-producer of this podcast, I would remind you that at 2:00 you have some dad responsibilities, and I think
I might have to.
You should smoke bomb out of this podcast, but we'll keep talking to these guys for a few minutes.
All right, I look forward. I kind of like when I come in late to a podcast or leave early, because then I'm excited to listen to a listener and hear the parts I missed. So I will take my leave.
What wisdom do you have to give them? Either now that you're a new father and they are new fathers of this game, what should they expect? What terror
nights and stress, and you're going to be worried about it the entire time.
There you go.
No change. That's the status quo.
So much stress.
Perfect. Thanks, Justin.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, in the world of visual art, it has often been said by wiser people than me that the last 10% of any composition takes 50% of the time. It's usually demonstrated visually as if you've drawn a portrait. That last 10% are the last highlights, the dot of light in the eye, which is then mirrored by the tip of the nose, which is then how much of that highlight it catches in the hair. Those are the things that make it feel like a real experience for the viewer. It's not always that, but a portrait is a good example of those things. You can draw a person, or you can draw a person that feels like they're there. How is this last 10%? What is in a game? What's that last 10% feel like? And is it equivalent? Is it taking like the longest amount of time to do that last little bit?
Yeah, I think so. So, I mean, a lot of the early development, the game design stuff is pretty much set in stone now. We've made a lot of the art. Now we've come to the point where the game feels good to play, but we need to optimize it. And so there's a whole bunch of work there that needs to be done. We need to get all the sound in. All the art needs to be like finalized, that kind of thing. So levels need to be finished. And that is, I mean, there's a lot.
How many levels in the game?
There's 10.
10 levels.
Plus a tutorial.
Plus a tutorial. And you have a demo that's going to be out somewhere?
It is out.
It is out
Right
now.
now, yeah.
So where can they, if someone's like, oh, Strange Brew, where do I find a demo?
Steam.
Yep, just on
Steam.
Steam.
Look up Strange Brew by Electric Monk Media.
And so there's a free playable demo,
Yes.
and then you can add it to, I don't know.
Add it to your wish list. Wish
Everything I
list.
know about these terms I've learned from my kids. Wish lists?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a free demo where they can see that work of the iterative process come to life as a game. If you were going to, I'm going to ask both of you separately to describe the story of the game for the player in your own words. What is the game experience like? What are they playing? How does it work? Who wants to go first? Oh, you got voluntold. All right, Devin, you're up. What is Strange Brew, and why should people play it?
You're addicted to coffee. Addicted to caffeine, right?
He's not talking directly to me, dear listener. He's talking about the...
And you just, you need to get to work. You're a mascot for this giant coffee corporation.
And what is menacing you along the way?
You're being chased by fellow caffeine addicts who just really like pumpkin spice.
The worst kind of coffee. All right.
Feeling your rust, yeah.
All right. So you want me to describe the plot of it?
Yeah, tell me the game in your own words.
Okay. I might deviate slightly, or might interpret this a little loosely.
You.
How else can you answer? So you play as Joe, who is the mascot for Moonduck's Coffee, and the game starts off when you wake up from a nightmare, I suppose. It's a tutorial level. You wake up from the tutorial level, and you're trying to make it to the midnight release for the pumpkin spice, and you are pursued by some what is it in the uncontrolled enthusiasm? No, it's some people riddled with uncontrolled enthusiasm. And as you make it to the first coffee shop, the mayhem that is pursuing you continues onwards and pushes you through the world of Strange Brew.
My favorite thing about the early levels was this weird globular fingertips of the creatures / enthusiasts that were chasing you. I want to know...
Caffeine enthusiasts.
Yeah. Is this like... at what point did the design element of those disgusting fingers become part of your game? This is really important to me.
I was painting the textures for the zombies, and then I just thought it would look really cool to have some orange glowing veins popping out of their forearms and hands.
Did pumpkin spice start before or after the glowing veins?
It's been a thing for a while.
That's
From
that's
conception.
core.
Joe is a true coffee enjoyer, and so he did.
You're going to divide the room right now. Is what you're going to do. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if we don't start a knife fight, then is it really a podcast?
He never drank any of the pumpkin spice, so
Amazing. So to me, what the game feels like is what I like. Okay, what attracts me to playing it, because I don't like platformers all that much because I'm bad at them, right? But what I like about it is that there is a ridiculous main character whose only job is to get away. And I feel like in a platformer, I can handle that. Like, that's what makes it fun to me, is like there isn't all this other stuff to manage or think about or do. It's like, there's some coffee, I'm going to drink it. And when I drink it, I'm faster. And if I'm faster, I can get away from these things. Mm-hmm. And the game is designed with enough sort of color, light, and the occasional explosion in your background that it feels dynamic and like an action movie, but where you're the accidental star of the action.
That's what we were going for.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
That's good.
And so
into it.
And that tone, and shout out to, for sure, shout out to Beth Gillespie, who did a whole bunch of the poster design and the Moonduck Coffee thing. Why I'm giving her a shout out is she also helped me design the cover of Blood Letters, my new novel. And so if you're listening, you're saying, wow, that Winnipeg has a really incestuous kind of art community. The answer is yes, it really does. We all know each other and we all try to help each other and do our very best work. Mm-hmm. What we're going to do next, but dear listener, the only way you can do it next is if you download that demo, is we're going to play some of the game, and I think you're going to record some of our bad playthrough of your game next. And so I look forward to extending this conversation and to having you back after launch day to talk about what that birth is really like and to see if Justin's advice holds true for you as the new dads of Strange Brew. This has been Super Pulp Science. I encourage all of you to join the fight and make comics.